Victim offender mediation and conferencing represents a very promising pathway to restorative justice through dialogue. It has clearly been found to be a practical and time-tested approach that results in many positive outcomes for victims, offenders, family members, and the larger community. The process of victim offender mediation or conferencing has been found to be most effective when the following concerns are addressed: victim-sensitive procedures that are respectful and offer choice, respectful treatment of those who commit criminal acts, voluntary participation by all parties, in-person preparation of the involved parties before they meet each other, use of a style of mediation that is dialogue-driven, not settlement-driven, often referred to as humanistic mediation, flexibility so that the process can be adapted to the specific needs and cultural context of the parties. In this extended training video, you will see two cases that highlight the importance of adapting the process to the needs of the person who was victimized and the person who caused the harm. In both cases, you will see segments of the separate preparation meetings and the mediation session. The first case involves just the victim, offender, and a single mediator. The second case involves other family members and a neighbor, as well as co-mediators.
Thanks, Rick, for coming by today after school. You know, when I talked to you last week on the phone, I had talked with your dad quite a bit beforehand, and I was hoping he'd be able to come today. I talked to him about what the program was about and why your probation officer referred you to it, but he made it pretty clear because of the double shifts I guess he's doing at the factory, there's just no way that he could come by with you. And he said you just should stop by, and I just wanted to make sure that you feel okay meeting today without your dad.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I mean, I'm glad that he's not here, and because, I guess he'd just make things more difficult, and so I guess I feel fine coming down here by myself.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I mentioned to you on the phone when I talked to you, I'm a volunteer that works with the local restorative justice program, and I'm not a court official, so I haven't read all the legal documents on what's happened. I mean, I know it was a break into a home, but what actually did happen, Rick, when that occurred a couple months ago?
Well, some friends and I, we were out drinking, and we were kind of getting low on cash, and we needed some cash, and we wanted to do something. We wanted something to do, so we found a house, and my friends told me to go break in while they waited in the car, and so I went in through a window, and I took a TV and $200 in cash, and so that was kind of it. I mean, we needed something to do, and we needed some cash, and so that's what we did.
When were you arrested, and what was that like?
Well, they found out a little bit later, and they came and got me, and then they took me off to the station and questioned me there.
Mm-hmm. Was your dad home at the time? What was that like, getting arrested at home?
He kind of had just gotten home, and he was really quite upset, that they'd come, and that I had gotten arrested and all that. He was really upset, though, that the other kids didn't get caught too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
would you like to hear a little more about how the program actually operates?
Yeah.
Well, this would give you the opportunity to actually meet the person whose home you broke into and to talk about what happened, the impact on her, the impact on you, and it would give you the chance to express any concerns you have, questions that she might have, I'm sure she would have of you, and then also to look at developing a plan to repair the harm, what the court calls restitution, some way of actually paying back. How does that sound to you, the whole idea of meeting her?
I'm a little nervous about meeting her, and because it's just kind of nervous, just meeting her and for the first time and stuff. But I would like I would like to do, help fix what I did and kind of, pay her back.
I'm curious, would you think back at what you did? How are you feeling about that now?
I'm feeling really bad, kind of, I shouldn't have done that, if, we didn't have any money, then we should have just, stopped and gone home or something, and, I shouldn't have, accepted, them telling me to go in and take the TV and stuff. And just, I'm feeling kind of bad about it right now.
Well, when we meet, and I have to make this very clear, this depends on her interest in doing this too, just as you have choice in this process, Rick. The person whose home you broke into, they have a choice too. And that's just very important that we make it as voluntary as possible. But if we do come together, if she's agreeable, when we come together, everything we talk about is pretty confidential. It's meant to really stay among us. It's not like I write up a report on what everyone's saying and submit it to the court. The only thing that would go to the court would be an actual agreement, if that is reached. And the way the mediation sessions typically go, I would begin by making kind of an opening statement, just saying a few things about what we'll be doing and any ground rules for communication. And then the two of you would have an opportunity to kind of tell your perspective on what happened. And typically we begin with the person who was victimized, to let them tell you directly, how it affected them. And then you would also have time to kind of tell your perspective. And then there'd be plenty of time just for questions or any concerns you have. And then later we'd talk about the actual losses and any ideas for repayment. I'm curious, Rick, do you have any thoughts about the repayment issue? How you would prefer to do that?
Well, I was kind of, thinking is maybe I could help her, do some work that she needed me to do, like, she needed me to help, dig something, or just kind of, do some work helping her, if that would be fine, or maybe getting a job and paying her, through my paychecks and through what I get. And
where are you working, Rick?
I'm working at a grocery store.
And so, what kind of take-home pay do you have on a weekly basis?
It's kind of about 30 to 70, depending on how
okay.
long I work.
Well, what you mentioned about your thoughts about maybe you could do some work for her, that is a possibility, but that's totally up to her. Some people who have been victimized don't want that. They don't want anyone coming back by their house. Others actually prefer that. But that's one of the things you'd be able to talk about in the mediation session. And whatever is agreed upon, it's up to the two of you. It's not like I'm not a judge. As a mediator, I'm just working with both of you to provide an opportunity to both talk about what happened and to repair the harm in whatever way possible. Rick, we encourage folks to have a support person with them during the actual mediation session, like a parent in your case, or a uncle, a coach, whatever. And same thing for the person who was victimized. Would you like anyone to be present with you during the mediation session?
No, just myself is fine.
You're sure you feel okay, just you want to do it yourself?
Yeah, just doing it myself.
Okay. The other thing I need to check out with you is I am going to go meet with the person whose home you broke into in the next few days. And is there anything that we've said here that you wouldn't want me to share with her in case she asks? See, I'm not going to go to her and give her a report like saying, Rick said all of these kind of things. But in case she asks something, is there anything that we've talked about that you would not want me to share?
I don't really think of anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, any questions, any other questions about the actual mediation session before we kind of wrap things up?
So it's just going to be like a mediator and us two?
Yeah, well, that depends if she wants a support person or not. I'll have to ask her. But it would be, actually, we'd be sitting at probably a table like this, and I'd be sitting here, and you would be here, and the person whose home you broke into would be over here. And I'll be beginning by saying a few things, and then very quickly it'll get into each of you telling each other your perspective and what happened and how it affected you. And typically, I'm very much in the background. I'm not talking a lot. This is really a time for the two of you to talk together. But I'm also there in case, there's any problems. If you have a hard time talking about certain things. And I'm there to make sure just that it remains a very safe place to talk.
Okay.
But it's also important that you realize I'm not there as an advocate. Just like I'm meeting with you, Rick, I also have to meet with her. And so I won't be taking sides with either of you. That's what a mediator is. I'll be helping you both be able to talk about it. And then I'll help with the restitution agreement, the plan to repair the harm. If you actually work out an agreement, we'll actually put it in writing, the specific terms of it, how much and over what period of time. And then both of you would sign it. I would sign it as a witness, and you'd each get a copy of it. And then a copy would go back to court, too.
All right.
Any other questions at all? Or?
No.
Okay. Well, thanks again for stopping by, and I'll call you back after I meet with the other person, whose home was broken into, okay?
Okay.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah.
That, what you just witnessed, is the primary way I would begin any kind of preparation, but each is a little different depending on who you're dealing with. And again, it a lot, for me, depends on the energy I'm picking up. For example, if the offender is not saying anything at all and just being real closed mouth, it might mean they need a little more information from you about the program. And so, tell them some more information. But just realize the more you start talking, the more difficult it is for you to tame the mind, for you to close your mouth and then ask them again, and what did happen? The important thing to realize is in preparing them, providing a place where they can speak and not be judged, and where you are patient and simply listening to them. That's real important. And equally important is gently explaining how the program will work. It puts them at peace, at ease. It reduces anxiety. All of the good research data we found over the years would be totally different if it was based on programs that did not prepare people beforehand, where people walk into the facilitation or mediation a bit nervous, not knowing what to expect. They don't know who you are as a mediator. That would shift things. The, quote, preparation, pre-mediation sessions are really an opportunity for you to begin building a relationship with people. People to people, human being to human being, They get to know a sense of who you are. You get to know a sense of who they are. There's more I could say, but I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions before we take our break, our morning break. Having seen that, having heard what I've shared with you, what kind of questions do you have? In a situation you described, yes, a restorative dialogue could be very appropriate. Technically, there's no crime committed, or they're uncertain, but clearly there was some behavior that hurt people. And it's not unusual that in some cases the offender feels they're the victim. Yeah, that could be quite appropriate. Now, here's a key thing. Whenever the victim and offender know each other, and if a lot of your cases are domestic violence, that has total different energy. Total different energy. Doing a domestic violence facilitation or a facilitation among neighbors who have been arguing and disputing for years, that can be more intense and difficult than when I do a facilitation with a parent of a murdered child who meets with the prisoner who killed their son. Because that's very traumatic, that's very emotional, but it's not over decades or years and years. So everything I'm saying to you has to be adjusted to your cultural context and the energy of the people you're working with. It is not suitable to routinely or ever to translate what the offender is saying to the victim or the victim to the offender unless you have clear permission. If you have permission to transfer information, that can be very, very helpful in creating a safe place and preparing the way for when you bring them together. It begins humanizing the other person. For example, with the victims, which we'll do that after our break, many victims during preparation will say to me, well, I know you've met with the offender. How do they feel about this? Are they still angry? You know, are they going to shout at me or something? Are they going to... And for me to tell them, if I had permission, that actually the offender is quite nervous, and he expressed to me in the preparation meeting, and he gave permission to me to share this with you if you asked, to let the victim know that the offender is actually, you know, a person who's quite nervous about meeting them and actually scared. That can help empower the victim. But I'm glad you raised this question, because you do not routinely do this. And in fact, I only do it if the victim asks. I don't, like the offender you just saw, I asked, do you have any problem if the victim asks questions and I shared any information from this preparation meeting? It's not like I go to the victim and report, the offender said this, the offender said that. No, no, no. It's all geared toward helping the victim feel safer about meeting. The more the victim begins seeing the, quote, offender in a more human perspective, the more that brings down the energy, the bad feelings, whatever. But let me just conclude by saying, ethically, again, you do not routinely share information from one to the other. Only do that with permission, and only do that if you're sharing it in response to specific questions the other person has. Trust is extremely important. That's the major focus of the preparation process. As a facilitator, as a mediator, it is within your power to begin building trust with one person, the victim, the offender. As a facilitator, you can't build trust between them together, but by your having already related to both and with your presence during the actual facilitation, if you are relaxed, if you're not judged, a lot of times mediators can sound kind of judgmental, or just very, very tight and professional, authoritarian. That is not a way of building trust. Another way of saying that, if you've already built trust with the offender, you've built trust with the victim, they're beginning to trust you. When you bring them together, your energy is going to build that trust more than anything you say. You've already had the connection with them, and if they feel comfortable with you and safe, what you model, your presence, that is what builds trust, not something you say. The fact that you already have built trust is good. That just rolls right into. But what you would have to be very careful of is to make sure that you build that trust with the victim. This is extremely important, because if you've already built relationship and some empathy with the offender, and without the victim, it needs to be balanced. But that's good. The more victims and offenders have communication with one person continually, instead of going to lots of different people in the justice system, the better. That's part of the trust building, that constant communication.